You've probably seen it happen. There's a guy in your extended circle. Not the loudest, not the flashiest, not even objectively the best looking. And yet somehow, women choose him, consistently. Not just for dates, but for real relationships. Commitment, loyalty, effort. And then there are other men, good men, who feel like they're constantly trying. Saying the right things, improving themselves, showing interest, being available, and still. They get passed over, slow faded, or kept in the great guy but category. So the question becomes uncomfortable very quickly. Why does it seem effortless for some men while others feel like they're always auditioning? Here's the first thing you need to know, and it might already challenge how you've been thinking about this. The men who get chosen without trying are still doing something. They're just not doing it consciously, and they're definitely not doing it performatively. Most men assume attraction is created by effort, by adding more charm, more confidence, more jokes, more explaining, more proving. But the men who get chosen aren't adding. They're subtracting. They're not trying to convince anyone of their value. They're operating from the assumption that their value is already present, and the interaction is simply about discovering compatibility. That difference alone changes everything. When a man feels like he has to earn interest, his energy subtly shifts. He listens, but he's also monitoring. He speaks, but he's also editing. He laughs, but he's also checking whether it landed. None of this is obvious on the surface, but emotionally, it's loud. It creates pressure. And pressure is the opposite of attraction. The men who get chosen don't feel like the interaction is a referendum on their worth. They're not thinking, I hope she likes me. They're thinking, let's see if this feels good. That mindset removes urgency. And urgency is what kills desire faster than almost anything else. Here's something most men don't realize until much later in life. People aren't attracted to effort. They're attracted to ease. Not laziness. Ease, emotional ease, psychological ease. The feeling that being around you doesn't require armor. When a man is internally settled, he doesn't rush moments, he doesn't fill silences, he doesn't force momentum, he lets conversations breathe. And in those spaces, something interesting happens. The other person starts to lean in, not because he's pulling them, but because there's room to move. Now let's talk about the men who don't get chosen, even though they're trying hard and doing the right things. Often, these men are overly focused on outcomes. They want clarity quickly. They want reassurance. They want to know where they stand. And on paper, that sounds healthy. But timing matters more than intention. When you seek certainty too early, it communicates insecurity. Not because you're weak, but because you're not yet grounded in yourself. It tells the other person that the connection needs to perform a function for you, rather than simply exist. And once an interaction becomes functional, where is this going? What are we? How do you feel about me? Attraction quietly steps out of the room. The men who get chosen let ambiguity exist without panicking. Not because they don't care, but because they trust themselves to handle whatever outcome emerges. That trust is felt immediately, even if no one can articulate it. There's another layer here that's uncomfortable but important. Men who get chosen tend to have a full life. Not a busy life, but a full one. They have routines, responsibilities, interests. People who rely on them, not in a flashy way, but in a grounded way. Their life doesn't rearrange itself around potential romance. When you're with someone like that, you don't feel like you're being consumed. You feel like you're being invited. An invitation feels very different from pursuit. Contrast that with a man whose emotional center of gravity shifts as soon as someone shows interest. He becomes more available, more flexible, more accommodating. Again, none of this is wrong in isolation. But when it happens too early, it sends a subtle message. My life has space because something is missing. And attraction rarely grows from being needed. It grows from being wanted. The men who get chosen don't need someone to complete them, validate them, or stabilize them. They want connection, yes, but they're already standing on solid ground. That stability creates a sense of safety that goes far deeper than charm or looks. And safety is where commitment lives. Here's something else that often goes unnoticed. Chosen men don't over-explain themselves. They don't justify their preferences. They don't apologize for their boundaries. They say things simply and allow others to respond however they respond. That alone filters out a huge amount of friction. When you don't try to manage how you're perceived, people are free to see you clearly. Some won't like what they see. And that's fine. The ones who do feel relief, and relief is incredibly attractive. On the other hand, men who don't get chosen often try to preempt rejection by explaining themselves into safety. They soften statements, they hedge opinions, they add disclaimers. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but this doesn't make you kinder. It makes you harder to feel. Attraction requires a clear signal, not dominance, clarity. Another quiet difference? Chosen men respond, they don't react, when something unexpected comes up. A change of plans, a mention of an ex, a delay in texting. They don't immediately interpret it as a threat. They pause, they assess, they stay regulated. Men who struggle often react quickly. They read into tone, they fill gaps with assumptions, they let anxiety drive interpretation. And anxiety is contagious. Even when it's unspoken, it changes the emotional temperature of the interaction. Think about it this way. If someone feels calm around you, they associate you with peace. If they feel tense around you, even subtly, they associate you with work. And no one commits to work unless they have to. Now, let's address something that might sting a little, but matters deeply. Many men who don't get chosen are actually very focused on being chosen. That focus turns the other person into a gatekeeper of worth. And when someone senses they're being positioned as a judge, they either pull away or feel pressured to perform. Chosen men don't pedestal. They don't chase approval, they engage as equals. Not because they're arrogant, but because they genuinely see themselves as enough whether the connection continues or not. That internal posture changes everything. It affects how they sit, how they listen, how they smile, how they say goodbye. It affects whether a moment feels like a transaction or an experience. And here's the paradox that trips most men up. The less you need a specific outcome, the more likely that outcome becomes possible. Because now the connection can unfold organically rather than being steered by fear. One more thing that rarely gets talked about. Chosen men are comfortable with endings. They don't cling, they don't bargain. They don't try to be remembered as the one who was different. If something isn't aligned, they let it go with dignity. That ability to walk away cleanly is one of the strongest attraction signals there is. Not because it's manipulative, but because it communicates self-respect. And self-respect is contagious. Men who struggle often hang on too long. They try to fix disinterest. They push for clarity when clarity has already been given through behavior. And every extra push quietly confirms the very thing they're afraid of. So if you're listening to this and thinking, okay, but how do I become one of the men who gets chosen? The answer isn't to copy behaviors. It's to shift your relationship with yourself. It's to build a life you don't want to escape from. It's to learn how to self-soothe instead of seeking reassurance. It's to speak plainly instead of strategically. It's to trust that you'll be okay, even if someone walks away. Because the men who get chosen without trying aren't lucky. They're regulated. They're grounded. They're not auditioning for a role. They're offering a place beside them. And that offer feels very different from a request. So if you've been trying harder and getting less, maybe it's not about doing more, maybe it's about doing less and becoming more solid underneath it all. Because when you stop trying to be chosen, you finally become choosable.